everyone, welcome back to Glue La La. If you're new here, my name is Jess. Whether you're a beginner crafter or if you're a seasoned pro, the DIYs I have for today are quick and easy and come together so nicely, and they're a great way to transition your home from summer to fall. Alright everyone, let's get started. For the first project, I'm going to use one of these circular mirrors that I found at the Dollar Tree. I was pretty excited about these mirrors. They're a nice size and I'm always looking for round mirrors for projects. So I started by taking the backing off of the mirror and it popped out pretty easily. And then I set the mirror aside. I wasn't going to need that for this project, but I kept the backing because I knew I would need that later on. Now, I don't know about you, but I always have a ton of scrap canvas pieces laying around from when I remove canvas from frames, because I use the frames a lot, but I don't always use the canvas. So I thought this would be a good place to use some of the canvas that I have on hand. So I started by removing just the folded edges off the canvas just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And I think this one came from a 12 by 12 canvas, so it's actually a pretty big piece of material. And then all I did was I laid that backing down on it and traced around it so I knew what size circle I would need for this project. Once I had the canvas cut out to the right size circle, I took some burlap ribbon that I had on hand. And this burlap ribbon is wired, so all I did was I removed the wire from both edges and then I cut off the little rolled seam that was on each side of the ribbon. And I pre-cut these strips to fit across the circle that I would need. So once I had the seam cut off on both sides of all the ribbons, then I just took out some of the threads from each side. And I'll zoom in here. That way you can see it kind of creates a little fringy effect on both sides of the ribbon. I thought that would just add a cool little texture to the background of this tray. After I had prepped all of the pieces of ribbon, I knew that I needed to adhere it down to the surface of this canvas, but I was afraid if I used hot glue it would show through the ribbon too much. So I decided just to go ahead and use some double-sided tape, and I really like this Scor-Tape. I usually buy it on Amazon. I'll make sure I have that link down below for you. But I just kind of eyeballed the center of the tray, and that's where I started with the first piece of ribbon. So I had the longest ribbon that I had cut and I laid that down. And then next, I'm using some washi tape just to act as a spacer. I think this washi tape was about 3/8 of an inch wide. So I laid that down next to one of my pieces of ribbon, and then that kind of gave me a guide as to where I needed to place my second piece of double-sided tape. So for double-sided tape, the best thing you can do to make sure that it adheres well is to use a bone folder or like the lid of a pen and just really burnish it down on there. That way it really gets the glue that's on the tape into both surfaces that you're working with. So then I just repeated that process the whole way across my circle. I laid my washi tape down as a guide to where I needed to put my next piece of double-sided tape, and I did that the whole way across on both sides of that centerpiece. Once I had all of the ribbons in place on the piece of canvas, I just cut the excess off around the edge. Now, because I was going to use this as a tray, I knew if I just laid that canvas down on that cardboard backing that came with it, it wouldn't be quite sturdy enough. So I'm using the mirror as a guide, and I'm tracing it around on a piece of chipboard just to make it a little bit sturdier so that if I set stuff on it, it won't collapse or anything from the weights of some little vases and things. To reassemble the frame, I laid the canvas piece down first, and then I put in that piece of chipboard that's going to substitute for the mirror. And then I was able to just pop the cardboard backing that came with it back onto the frame. I knew I wanted this tray to be elevated just a little bit, so to create little feet for this tray, I'm using one of these brain teaser puzzles from the Dollar Tree, and they're really just a string of wooden blocks that are strung together with a piece of elastic. but they're strung together kind of weird. So a few of them had holes that went straight through the center, and some of them, the holes kind of went through on an angle. So this probably wouldn't be something that I would want to restring to use as like a wooden bead garland, but it is going to make really cute feet for this tray. So the darker brown pieces that are in this pack, I was okay with the color that they already were, but if you didn't like the color, you could easily paint these or sand them down a little bit and stain them to match your decor. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but to be able to space these out evenly, I kind of used the tabs that were already on the frame to help me space out the 4 that I needed to use as the feet. And you can see I was kind of pushing down on that cardboard backing before I added my hot glue, because where the ridge was inside the frame, I wanted to make sure that my foot was sitting on that ridge just to keep it as sturdy as possible. And then after I had attached my 4 feet, I did go ahead and add a 5th one in the center. You can't really see it from the side of the tray, but like I said, I wanted to make sure that the inside of this tray was really sturdy for whenever I set things on it. One thing I forgot to mention is that I chose not to paint the frame because I actually like the black color, and I really love black and burlap together. That's why I chose the burlap ribbon. But this is one way that you could customize it to fit your style, or even if you wanted to make multiple ones for different holidays, you could change up the ribbon you use or paint the frame itself different colors for each of the holidays. For the second project, I wanted to create some kind of vase or jar to put on the tray that could hold some flowers. So one thing I like to do is look for pieces that kind of have some of the work done for me. So I found this jar at the Dollar Tree, and it had this really cool diamond shaped pattern already on it. So I knew that would make kind of a statement when I was finished with it. But it would be a lot less work for me. So I took 2 of my favorite colors of chalk paint. I use this agave color a lot, and I really like it, but I wanted to mute it down just a little bit. So I did mix it in with some white paint, and you can see here, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but I didn't mind if there were still some swirls of the white and the agave in there. I didn't mind if there was a little bit of variation in color. Now, the 2 paints that I used were kind of thick. They were a little bit older, so I actually only had to do 1 coat on this glass jar. But if it was a new bottle of paint, I probably would have had to do 2 coats altogether. But like I said, because my paint was a little bit thicker and I did lay it on pretty thick too, I ended up only doing 1 coat. I think this jar came out so nice just on its own, but I do tend to like things a little bit distressed and a little bit more rustic looking. So because that diamond shaped pattern was already on the jar, I just needed to take my sanding block over it a little bit to bring out that pattern a little bit more. And in some spots I sanded it more than others, just to make it look a little bit more random and a little bit more naturally distressed. The Dollar Tree came out with these really great laser cut out wooden pieces, and I knew these would be a good way to transition certain things from different holidays and from summer to fall like I'm doing here. So to decorate this jar, I wrapped a little bit of jute twine around the neck of the jar, and then I created, I don't really know what you call it, like a little charm dangle out of these wooden pieces. So I cut a piece of jute down and I glued one of the wooden leaves to each end. And I do have a pack of butterflies as well that I don't show you, but I do the same thing with the butterflies. I just take a little piece of jute and I kind of glue one on each end, and that way it'll create a little dangle for the front of the jar. And since I'm not actually going to glue it on, I'm going to tie it on, that will make it easier to switch out for the different seasons. I love the versatility of a piece like this, and it's so customizable too, because like I showed you in the beginning, if you like more of that modern look, you could have just left the jar painted, or you could have even just left it clear and just added on the little embellishments that you liked. And I liked that I was able to change this out pretty quickly and easily just by tying on a new little dangle, and I could transition this also from summer to fall. Okay, so for the last project, I wanted to create a wooden bead garland because I love using these as accents around my house. So the wooden beads that I buy, I get from Amazon, and I'll have those linked below too. They come in a really big bag and there's a ton of sizes in there. And I like to use the thinner jute that you can buy at the Dollar Tree. So I wanted to be able to create a wooden bead garland that you could also kind of change the end. Instead of just having a tassel on both ends, I wanted to have an end where I could change it out for other things. So I'm going to start by taking this thinner jute twine, and I kind of measured out what length I thought I would like my beads to be, and I doubled it up. So once I had it doubled up, I took the two loose ends and I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue there. And after it cools for a few seconds, then I'm going to take my fingers and kind of roll it in between my fingers. That way it'll kind of create a stiff end to the jute, and it'll make it easier to fish through the center of the beads. So for the other end of the string, I wanted to keep a little bit of a loop so that I could tie things on there to add a little bit of extra decoration. So I left probably, I guess, about a 1/2 inch loop on the end, and I just tied it in a knot. And then I did go through and I tried to burn some of the extra frayed pieces off with my lighter a little bit, just because the jute was kind of coming apart at this point. I don't know what was wrong with it, but I did kind of singe the ends a little bit just so that I could get inside that loop a little bit easier. Then using the other end of the jute where I had hot glued the two ends together, I just started stringing on my wooden beads, and I decided to use two different sizes, and I just alternated between the two sizes. And then you can see here that knot with the loop on the end, it kind of creates a stopper too. And then I just kept adding beads until I was happy with the length of the garland. I stopped adding beads once I had about 6 or 8 inches left on the jute string that I had originally cut, because I knew I wanted to create a tassel for that end, and I wanted some tails to be able to add my tassel. So I'm showing you the difference here in the two jute twines that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and like I said, I used that thinner one to string the beads on, but I'm going to use this thicker one to create my tassel. So the way I like to create tassels is I take something kind of stiff. I'm using my mini scoreboard here, and it's about 7 inches wide, and I'm just wrapping the jute twine around as many times as I want. I wanted a pretty full tassel, so I wrapped it around a good bit. And then before I remove the jute from the board, I always like to cut it first. So I'm just cutting on one end, and I did have quite a few layers of jute on here, so this was a little bit hard to cut through, but I just took my time and I kept cutting one string at a time. So then I'm left with all of these jute strings that are the same length. So to attach it to my wood beads, since I didn't tie a knot on the end, I'm gonna tie the knot inside the tassel. That way the end of the tassel goes right up to the bottom of the last bead, and you don't have to worry about trying to glue it on or tying it on and seeing the knot and everything. So then I folded all my jute in half, and I took another piece and I tied it about 1 inch down from where the fold is. Oh, that's right, I did add a little bit of hot glue in the center there because it does help hold that knot into place a little bit better. So once I had that glue in place, then I took another piece of jute and I tied it about 1 inch down from the top of the tassel, and I tied it in a knot, and then I just kind of wrapped those ends around to create a little bit of a band just to finish it off, and then I did use a little bit of hot glue just to hold those ends into place. And then of course I had to give the tassel a little bit of a haircut just to make sure that those ends were nice and even. So for the other end of the garland, I wanted to create a little bit of a tag, and they had these really cool metal tags at the Dollar Tree. And what's neat about these is you can put something on each side. So I used my Cricut and I cut out the word sunshine and harvest. I figured that would be good for summer and fall. And if you have a Cricut and you're interested in that font, I used this one here called DTC Autumn Sunshine, which is also kind of where I got the idea of what words I should put on the tag. But if you don't have a Cricut, of course you could just use some of the letter stickers that you can find at the Dollar Tree or any other craft store, or if you're really good at hand lettering, you could also just kind of hand paint some words on a tag like this. But I am not great at hand lettering, so I love my Cricut. Attaching this to the other end of the garland is pretty simple. I just took another piece of jute twine. Actually, that twine came in the pack with the tags. And I kind of fished it through the hole in the tag, and then I'm going to slip one of the ends through that loop that I created on the other end, and then I'll just simply tie it in a bow, and then that way this tag I can just kind of flip over and either make sure that the word sunshine is up or the word harvest is up. But if I wanted to, I could put other words on other tags or even little images, or you could even tie on a little Christmas ornament at Christmas time. There's just a lot of different ways that you could decorate the end of this garland. Of course, you could always just add a tassel to the other end too if you wanted to keep it plain and not have to worry about switching it out for the different seasons. I love using wooden bead garlands in my decorating. I think they just add such a cute little touch to any kind of display that I'm setting up around my house, whether it's on a tiered tray or on a bookshelf or just even on a little display crate or something like that. I just think they're so cute. Here's a final look at all three pieces. I love that these look so good together, but I also love that you can use them separately also. And I really like that you can transition these from summer to fall because I love pieces that carry over like that. Alright everyone, I hope you liked today's video. If you did, make sure you click subscribe, hit the thumbs up, ring the bell, do all the things. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye!